One of the issues that the right has really grabbed onto in the past 5 or 6 years is this idea that, hey, the left has gone too far. They're authoritarian. They want to police comedians and their speech, and they want to ban speakers on campus who don't agree with them, and we're against that. We are pro-free speech. We're pro-free expression. We're in favor of a free press. Basically, like, the First Amendment is our whole thing. We live and die by the First Amendment. That's our main issue. But it's always been kind of astonishing that they can use this rhetoric and market like they're the big believers in the First Amendment, while also, for example, backing Trump, who famously said we should open up our libel laws to go after the media for being unfair and fake news. Trump sued Bill Maher because Bill Maher made a joke he didn't like. Imagine if a pink-haired kid on a college campus sued a comedian for a joke they didn't like. You would not hear the end of it. It would go on for like weeks. You'd have segments from Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and Michael Knowles and every right-wing commentator you could think of, Dave Rubin. They'd be like, oh my God, authoritarian. And by the way, they would be correct if that actually happened. But that didn't happen. What did happen is Trump suing Bill Maher over a joke. He sued CNN for hundreds of millions of dollars because they said stuff he didn't like. So there's always been this, total breakdown of here's their rhetoric, but here's who they actually support and what they actually support. Well, now we have another crystal clear example of just how insane they... So the Stop Woke Act, remember that? Parts of that got slapped down. Why? Because the court said, this is totally unconstitutional. The Stop Woke Act was, of course, a Ron DeSantis initiative. Well, now look at this. Florida Republican wants any blogger writing about Ron DeSantis to register with the state. Huh? A new bill proposed by a Republican state senator in Florida would require bloggers to register with the state if they write about Governor Ron DeSantis and other members of the government. NBC News Channel 8 wrote that Senator Jason Broder's bill would impose fines on anyone who refuses to register to a maximum of $2,500. There would be an additional $25 each day the fee isn't paid. Senate Bill 1316, Information Dissemination, would mandate that writers register with the Florida Office of Legislative Services or the Commission on Ethics. It would apply to anyone who writes an article, a story, or a series of stories about the governor, the lieutenant governor, a cabinet officer, or any member of the legislature, and is paid for doing so. They would have to register within a 5-day period by the publication of the article or stories. If the blogger writes about any of those lawmakers again, the writer would be required to submit a monthly report on the 10th of every month with the state office. If no content is published that month, they wouldn't have to submit a report. So this is about registering journalists, which, by the way, is totally unconstitutional, totally against the First Amendment. The government is supposed to be out of matters like this, not involved in matters like this. Why? Because you can't trust the government to set up a ministry of truth and determine who is and isn't a journalist, who's allowed and who's not allowed. That's not how journalism works. If you're on the street and there's a police brutality situation, you pull out your phone and record it, and then you post later, you're a journalist. You're a journalist. They want journalists to register with the state. Now, of course, the real reason is they want to try to silence any criticism of them and Ron DeSantis, the Florida Republican Party. That's what they want to do. The report also explained that it would apply to concern an elected member of the legislature or an officer of the executive branch. The report would require the person to reveal how much money they're earning for writing the post. If compensation is paid for a series of posts or for a specific amount of time, the blogger would be required to disclose the total amount to be received upon publication of the first post in said series or time frame. The law would also demand bloggers file additional paperwork if they fail to file the initial paperwork. It's a similar law to the lobbying restrictions in Florida and mandates a 30-day timeline for the fines and an additional $25 fine per day the fine isn't paid. The same rule would not apply to newspapers or similar publications. So they're trying to carve out the legacy outlets, but anybody who's a blog... Okay, stop and think about this, guys. This is a war on independent media. So the legacy outlets are excluded from this. You can keep doing what you do. But if you're a quote-unquote blogger, in other words, if you're not part of an approved outlet or organization or establishment, well, you have to pay to have an opinion. You have to pay to write about the governor. This is clearly censorious. I've never seen anything that is more against the spirit of the First Amendment. This is like when Trump came out and said in a rally, you should punish flag burning with up to a year in jail. Dude, we already had a Supreme Court case on that issue. Even Antonin Scalia, the far-right judge, said, look, I might not like it when they burn the flag, but it's protected speech. This is 100% protected speech. Man, DeSantis and the Florida Republican Party, their way of trying to gain popularity is to go all in on the culture war and go full authoritarian as much as possible. Even that bill, remember that bill where they said, like, a gay teacher can't put a picture on their desk of them and their spouse because that's like grooming kids or whatever in their minds, from their perspective. Like, what are we talking about here? You weren't allowed to wear rainbow colors in some school districts throughout Florida because they were afraid of crossing the line when it came to the new bill. This is crazy, man. This is insane. So, look, my main reason for doing this segment is to say, I know the free speech warriors are going to be all over this. I know Ben Shapiro. I know Dave Rubin. I know all these people who care so deeply about free speech are going to be all over this and saying this is an abomination, this is anti-First Amendment, this is authoritarian, this is unconstitutional, this is about stifling criticism. Don't hold your breath, y'all, because these are not principled people. These are political hacks. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.